Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica Podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner AFRY. AFRY is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it. Hello, and thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica Podcast. Today we have a new story and we have an amazing storyteller. I have the pleasure to welcome you, Carmen, to Urbanistica Podcast. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm really good. It's a very busy week here in Birmingham, Alabama, United States. It is Magic City Classic Week, which is a full week of events that leads up to an American football game on Saturday, where there will be more than 100,000 people hanging out between two historically Black colleges, two historically Black universities, Alabama A&M and Alabama State. So this has been going on for more than 80 years.
Nice.
It's the largest event of its type in the country. So I'm up early.
What time is it now, by the way?
It's about 8:15 in the morning here.
Okay,
which
that's...
I know to a lot of people is not early. That's like, well, that's what time work starts. But for me, it's early.
Yeah. What what time do you usually wake up and start work?
I'm usually a 9 a.m. starter,
Okay.
so to speak. I'm not a morning person. I am a nocturnal person. I am a night timer. So I'm already working against my nature. But yeah, and as the seasons change and it's still dark, when my alarm goes off, I struggle a lot this time of year.
I understand. Same here in Sweden. You wake up, it's dark, and then you go to work, and when you go out and go back home, it's dark. So you don't see a sun.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just as a person that adores the sun, it's hard this time of year. I actually just sat in the park. We have a park across from City Hall. And I just sat on a bench and just sat in the sun while it was up because I was like, I missed the sun already.
So, Carmen, we have listeners from 140 countries, and I'm so happy that you're here and going to inspire us. Give us a short highlight about you, Carmen.
Yeah, well, I am born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, here in the United States. Very historic place in regards to the civil rights movement here in the United States. I've lived other places around the American South, traveled other places, but I developed an interest and a passion for government work while I was in college. I had always intended to be an international businesswoman.
Nice.
When I was in college. So I graduated from the University of Alabama in Huntsville with a degree in foreign language and international trade, with my foreign language being Spanish. And I happened to graduate during the Great Recession. So most people, I went to graduate school because there wasn't work. It was just, I finished in 2006 and we were just going downhill. And I thought, I can go work for the federal government. But I took a local government class. I wandered into one class in graduate school called local government. And I was like, I'd rather do this. So I was bit by the local government bug. and have been active in it ever since, in transportation planning and policy, community economic development, business development for ethnic minorities and gender minorities, um, placemaking, affordable housing, the whole gamut.
Yeah,
Anything
yeah.
that works to make the government work for more people.
Mm. But how to say, why this field attracted you so much and you became so passionate about it, like this profession?
I think it's foundational to people's well-being. I
Mm.
think that um, there are a lot of people working on a lot of things. To me, that seems more upstream or more downstream, rather.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we need to fix this or we want to work on this. And I'm like, well, if people don't have anywhere to live, like that is a fundamental, foundational um, part of people's well-being. Like,
Yeah.
you working on your, whatever it is,
Mm.
further down the stream, while it may make you feel good, it's not going to be as effective because we don't have enough people going into the funnel upstream.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is. It's like these are, people having places to live that are safe and affordable, and having access to quality education,
Yeah.
and having transportation to get that education and try those jobs, or have support to be entrepreneurs. These are just, like, to me, the foundational building blocks of civilization.
Mm.
So I'd rather work there. So the work that other people are doing downstream, like, there are more people who can benefit because they have the building blocks they need.
Yeah. Are you enjoying what you work with now?
Yes, yeah, I
Mm.
really
Mm.
enjoy my job. I am currently chief of staff to a city councilwoman, Carol Clark,
Yeah.
here in Birmingham, Alabama. We represent, she represents, I work for her, um, District 8 in
Yeah.
Birmingham, which is, very dense. It's not a lot compared to other districts. It's not as large
Mm.
because it does have some densely populated neighborhoods, but it is also home to 3 sports venues,
Okay.
including the oldest baseball field in the United States. So
What?
it's yeah. So
Wow.
it's really this dynamic and
Yeah.
diverse. We have
Yeah.
a college, a football stadium, another sports facility,
Mm.
commercial space, but also really dense neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Some of them having great architectural significance, which I know the fan. You have architecture fans on here. We have some great architecture here
Yeah.
in Birmingham as well. And so, it's been a great exercise in getting to know
Mm.
people,
Yeah.
different kinds of people at different stages of life.
Mm.
We do have a lot of people who are older, but
Yeah.
our older residents are much more active. Like, I remember as a young person thinking of an old person
Yeah.
and thinking, oh, they're old, they can't move, they don't do, but
Uh,
these
uh,
older people now are
exactly.
yeah, they're much
Yeah.
more active, much more
Yeah.
proactive. They're interested in their
Mm.
neighborhoods.
Mm.
So we get to work with them on projects, placemaking projects in their
Mm.
neighborhoods, and they want vibrant neighborhoods that
Mm.
that match the vitality that they have as
Yeah.
individuals. So it's fun to work with them.
Yeah. Tell me like about a project that you worked on.
So one of the things that we do consistently is
Mm.
that once a week we meet at the Starbucks in our district,
Yeah.
and we walk a mile and a half with our residents. Like I said,
Okay.
mostly older. And so it's a great way to exercise with them on a weekly basis to get, like, just, get the
Mm.
body moving. But it's also a great way to talk with them and understand more about how they're feeling, what they're seeing in the neighborhoods.
Mm.
Obviously, staff, we know we can't be everywhere all the
No.
time.
No.
So this is a great opportunity to just converse with them and get an understanding of what's happening and all of that.
Mm.
We're also using some funds from the American Rescue Plan Act
Mm.
to do some greening in our
Yeah.
neighborhoods. We're transforming a space on one of the main roads that's experiencing a lot of erosion. I believe that, like, the retaining wall has broken,
Yeah.
and we want to use funds to make it a more passive green space
Mm,
where people can kind of walk through and experience some cooling, just like this really calming place. But just to provide a neighborhood amenity that's native planted, smartly landscaped,
mm.
so it's not another maintenance headache,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
an opportunity for people in the immediate area to experience like some green space and
Mm,
just to have another place to relax. We're planting trees in our parks to provide shade so
yeah.
that when kids go out and play, they're not just in the scorching sun all the time, or parents and guardians have somewhere to sit under a tree
Mm,
while they're watching kids play. And we're also working on a more robust project in one of our neighborhoods of creating this gateway
okay.
that is this, more hardscaped public space that is
Mm.
being co-designed with neighborhood residents and some of the school children. So it's a lot going on, but it's good stuff.
It's good stuff, of course. But tell me about the process. Like when you listen from people in the community, let's say they
Mhm.
have feedback to do this or develop this, or to fix this. How is the process from the time you hear you take this data until you fix the problem or create the new thing or develop a new place?
Yeah, so the way our local government functions, we have a strong mayor system. So
Mm,
the mayor actually administrates the government. So depending on what the issue is, our office may not have any jurisdiction over executing the
okay.
project.
Yeah.
So we act more in an advocacy capacity,
Yes.
um, or as we're the reminder button. We're like, hey guys, we need this project. Or hey guys, we just heard from the residents, they're still having issue with this. So
Yeah.
that happens. But then there are some things that can fall within our purview. And if we have the funding and if it makes sense, we will take care of in our office. But those things tend to be more programmatic.
Mm,
Anything infrastructure related or that, calls for the removal of dirt. I like to say anything that's going to move the earth
mm.
has to be handled by the administration. But, we fund projects or programs rather at our local library to make sure that our seniors have social activities. We have a really robust computer literacy program for our
Okay.
seniors.
Mm.
So a lot of the things that we do out of our office are more programmatic than it is like actual physical projects because the way our
Yeah.
government is bifurcated.
Yeah. And when you work a lot with people in the same area, you start to, like, how to say, build a community and relationships. So you have like a network of people now in the community.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
and they just and you get to know them, you get to know their families,
Yeah. Yeah.
what goes on. They're checking on you, you're checking on them. If I don't see somebody that if we have a few walks and one of my regulars is not there,
Mm,
we're
mm.
gonna call and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
And we do encourage that kind of neighborly activity. If you
Mm.
haven't seen a neighbor, check on them, particularly, as we get into winter with flu season, and COVID on the rise for us and things like that. Um, we are encouraging, these
Yeah.
social connections and social cohesion to just keep up with people,
Yeah.
to make sure people are doing okay. But
Mm,
yeah, it's been a great exercise in just intergenerational communication and dialogue.
mm, mm,
When we're walking, it's usually like you're out there walking with two or at least three different generations of people and
mhm,
experiences and, we're all, just talking and figuring things out together. So
mm.
that's cool.
Where is the line or the boundary between Carmen working in the city council and Carmen, like, let's say, just a citizen, the neighbor? Is it like there is a line between these two, or no? You're the same. I'm talking like more relationship wise with the community.
Oh, yeah, I so that my council representative is not the counselor I work for. And I actually realized like I probably should ask my actual representative for more things, but I don't. Because like we were up there and I'm like, okay, if I need something, I could just,
Yeah,
figure it out
yeah.
myself. But I do want to as I settle, I do want to distinguish more between
Mm,
my employee self and my actual neighborhood self and what
mm,
I'm like with my neighbors, what kind of events I'm hosting at my home or in my home, and things like that. That is a very good question. I don't think I've ever thought about like how I
mm.
distinguish between because you just kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess at some point, if I will return to just being a resident, but I don't know.
W-
I'm gonna have to think
uh,
about that some more.
yeah. A lot of our listeners working with
Mhm.
the community engagement processes and so on, including me as well. So let's say, what are the three key elements that create a strong relationship between us working, let's say, with placemaking or development, and
Mhm.
a neighborhood or a community? What should we like really think about and keep in mind?
One is honesty, like honesty, integrity. I know that's two words, but they go together. Honesty and
Yeah.
integrity. Particularly in populations that don't have a historically good relationship with the government. I
Okay.
think we take for granted that
Mm.
people love the government or they trust the government implicitly, or
uh,
they've always had this positive relationship. And that's not true.
mm,
Um, Depending on the people, the population, and the history of the place, you have to show up, honestly and with integrity and understanding. This is probably all three now. Understanding how this population of people
mm,
perceive the organization that you represent,
yeah.
right? 'Cause that's going to dictate whether, first of all, whether or not they believe anything that you say,
Mm,
and two, how or if they participate. So I think that's one
mm,
thing. Um, Secondly, I think there is the listening part and suspending a bit of your expertise.
mm.
So, I talk about this often. We go and we get our fancy degrees and we go around the world studying things and we have all this knowledge information,
uh,
and rightfully so, we want to share it with people. It's like, well, you should do this and you should do that.
mm,
But I think there's a humility that we should also couple with our expertise,
yeah.
so that residents are the ones who are driving
Mm,
these decisions. Now I will say I don't let people drive us off of a cliff. I will step in from time to time, like, hey, we need to move this in a
mm,
different
mm.
direction.
Yeah.
I will employ, but I will give them a reason and back it up with expertise as to why we don't, like, what the potential outcomes would be if we go this direction. So we want to try something else.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, using your expertise more as guardrails. But you know, there's this balance of letting or having residents
Mm,
co-design their community and using to their benefit the expertise and knowledge that we've gathered.
yeah.
And so you have to strike that balance. And it's not always easy because there are many times I am like bursting on the inside and I'm like,
Mm.
no, no more parking. Um, and this is what they want, but this is
Mm,
also, a lot of people have a very singular experience of cities, and because
yeah.
they haven't studied and haven't been around. And
Mm,
so there's like always this dance of, okay, how do I introduce different topics or different
yeah.
ideas without being dismissive of the things that they
Mm,
want,
yeah.
or making people feel like they're less intelligent, or
Mm,
not, or that their ideas are not good or worthy.
yeah.
So that's like the second part. It's like striking that balance of expertise and humility so to manage that relationship.
Mm.
And lastly, I think fun, enjoyment, that passion, because I think people respond well to me because I'm passionate about this. I'm really into it. They know me as a person. They know I wouldn't,
Yeah.
the kind of person that I am, I would not do something that's harmful.
Mm. Mm.
So I think that when people see that you have this infectious passion for a particular subject,
Mm.
they're more willing to listen to you and they enjoy working with you because it's a peaceful process, it's a joyful process, it's an exciting process, and it doesn't get lost
Mm.
in all the other things.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that happens, we have projects that go on, things that pop up,
Yeah.
and being able to make sure that this train stays on the tracks and it actually goes and the project actually gets done,
Mm.
is another real skill. So
Exactly.
I think, yeah, just honesty, integrity, humility with your expertise, and being passion forward, to really bring people along this emotional journey of co-creation
Mm.
is
Mm.
is what I say.
Yeah. Very, very good. How to say, elements that we can work on. But sometimes, Carmen, like we don't have
Mhm,
enough time to build a strong relationship with the community. Like, let's say we are there for very few hours, and then
mhm.
we leave and go back to the office and work on the project. So, how to say, many of us try to maximize the output in these 2 hours or 4 hours. At the same time, sometimes we feel that the community are not really giving everything they have. They have more, but it's because we are very new in the relationship, so they don't give
Mhm,
everything. So
mhm.
how can we think there to maximize the output at the same time, make them feel good and you know?
Yeah, I think, well, when I'm in those situations, I tell people up front, I'm like, hey, listen, so we only have five
So being
hours.
super honest, yeah.
We only have three. Like, this is what we have. And, we're going to have to figure
Mm,
out
yeah.
how to, extract information in this
Mm,
amount of time and this amount of people. Like, I put everybody on task.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
this is what we have.
yeah.
And, bring them into the process. So it's a
Mm,
co-facilitation. But I also think like some research prior, like I said, researching communities, understanding if possible, like what are their informal networks, what are their cultural customs,
yeah.
how is information passed?
Mm,
Is this a highly literate internet community that where they're all aligned, or is this more of an informal, because some of our neighborhoods are this way. Like we can tell one person in the neighborhood, and that one person has like some sort of informal
yeah.
calling tree, and they can disseminate information.
Mm, mm,
Um, so I think there's some research beforehand, and just getting as much as you can of
yeah.
understanding about how this community operates,
Mm,
um, and how they've been historically treated or what
yeah.
they've been interested in before. And then showing up and saying, hey, we have a very limited time,
Mm,
but it doesn't mean that we don't get a quality project or a
okay.
quality product.
Mm,
And just, and bringing that challenge to them to say, hey, I know you may not know me and I'm a new face, but this is our job. This is our
yeah.
task.
Yeah.
And this is the decisions that we're making here are
Mm,
not going to are multi-generational decisions.
yeah.
And so you have the honor and the responsibility to be here to co-create and create
Mm,
this for people you don't even know, for people who are yet born. And
mm.
so, like, how can we do this responsibly?
Yeah. But
I put it back on them. I'm like, this your community. I'm
no,
just
but
here to help.
it's true. I play the same card as well. Like I tell them, we have, let's say, 2 hours, and this is the
Mhm,
project. We cannot change it now. We have this opportunity. We have these cards, so we have to play the best game of what we have in our hands. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's a bit like difficult because they don't feel really comfortable and sharing and everything, and feel that it's like very quick. 2 hours is not
mhm.
enough, or 4 hours is not enough, and so on. Sometimes I love also to ask you. Sometimes they are angry because of
Yeah.
like how they were treated from the council or the
Yeah.
city during the past years. But we are the face of the city, so every anger, all the anger coming in in us, on us.
Yeah. I think in those situations, I like to do a lemon squeeze. That's what I call it. Um, and just let you get it out. Like everybody gets to write down
Yeah.
something,
Mm.
unless it's like we're talking about a large issue that needs to be facilitated by somebody else.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I'm like, write it down, write down your grievances and post them over here.
Mm.
Um, because we can't get to what we need to do if it's blocked by this particular negative energy.
Yeah.
And what I say is that we're just putting it in the parking lot, so to speak. We're not dismissing it. We're not saying we're not going to turn it in.
Mm.
We're not saying we're going to do anything other than just sit it right here so we can get to the task at hand.
Yeah.
Now, if we go ahead and get to work, we can have time in the end to come back to
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things. And, obviously we can still pass them on
Mm.
to whomever they need to go to at the government or the organization. But I think, acknowledging that people do have feelings about
Mm.
things
Mm.
and giving them an opportunity to express it and visualize it like it
Yeah.
exists, it is real, affirmed, it is there, but we need to park it right there for right now, just
Mm.
for these
Mm.
2 hours or however long we're together,
Yeah.
so we can get to what we're doing and then
Mm.
go back and address it or however you need to pass it
Yeah.
on to whomever.
Did it happen a lot of times to you, or maybe if there was like one time they were really, really angry?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some meetings that kind of get hijacked a
Uh,
bit
uh,
on a singular topic that, and we try to bring it back.
mm.
But yes, I have been both successful and unsuccessful
Mm.
in managing the quote unquote lemon squeeze of the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because I think also one of the issues is that, you know, when we're out in the field, this is how they interact with the government. Like they're
Mm.
not
Mm.
in City Hall, or they may not understand the structure or whom they need to be speaking with about a certain issue. So as
Yeah.
soon as they see me or they see you or someone
So
else,
they
they're like, hey,
just.
you. It's like, it's like, whoa,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
even do that, or I don't know how to, it's like, but it doesn't
Yeah.
matter because you represent
The city. Yeah.
the organization.
Yeah.
So yes, I've been in meetings where we were talking about sustainability
Mm.
measures to, obviously lower costs and beautify
Mm.
neighborhoods, understanding our stormwater system
Yeah.
is old, infrastructure all over the world is older. And I'm trying to talk about like green initiatives, and like people just want like they're like, no, but like what about the parks? Like, cause it was some trees that fell in the park, and I'm like,
Ah.
what? No, we're talking about something. Like no, I'm talking to
Yeah.
you about
Yeah.
how we're gonna manage stormwater. Like, don't put your leaves in the drain, bag your
Yeah. Yeah.
leaves. And it's like, no, they
Mm.
want to talk about parks. And so sometimes it goes well, and
Ah.
we're able to manage conversations. And sometimes the emotions
Mm.
are so big
Yeah.
that we can't.
Mm.
Like depending on what it is and how recently it happened,
Yeah.
um, you're not actually able to park it. You kind of
E-
have to take it
yeah,
on.
exactly. You need just to let them talk and
Mm,
give this energy that they have, because as you mentioned, we are like the face of the city, or like ambassadors from the city. And I
mhm.
don't blame the community, because sometimes they don't see anybody from the city. Like, it's very hard to
Yeah.
reach out, you know.
Other
Be-
than the people who pick up the garbage, I mean, you think about it, those are the most visible,
yeah.
like public works
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
most visible of the city employees. Like you see those people at least once a
uh,
week. They come pick up your garbage. They're
yeah,
out cutting
yeah,
grass. They're doing
mm,
something. And then secondary will be police and fire, but
yeah.
everybody else is at City Hall.
Exactly. The like here in Sweden, some cities, it's a kind of impossible to get in touch with the person who's responsible, or you need to talk. It's
Mhm.
usually okay. Leave your feedback on email or email us, and we will like send it further. And because of this big organizational structures, it's a kind of there is a big gap between the people and
Mhm.
people working in the city. And that's why when people, let's say, meet us, they be like, okay, this is my only chance to say what I have. And it happened a lot of times to me. Like they talk about something else than the topic of what I want
Mhm.
or my project. And in the end, like I cannot, I just listen and say, okay, I will note this down, and I send, give it to the responsible person, and they will reply you. But it's so sad to see that people who are working in the city, of course, not all of the cities, not all
Mhm.
we are commenting this group only, people working in the city who has the mission to make people's life better and better quality. At the same time, they are not even close to them. They're not even visible.
Yeah. It is, it is, it is part of it's like the nature of the job, right? So like if you're the person who examines all the building plans,
Uh,
then no, you don't really get to leave because you're there looking to make sure that all the buildings are being
yeah,
built
yeah,
correctly. So some of like the nature of some of the jobs just doesn't allow
that's true.
in the normal course of doing the job to be out.
Mm,
But I do think that like people should almost be kind of mandated like a few hours every month. You gotta get out, like
mm.
everybody,
Yeah,
even the receptionists, like who are answering the phones or making the appointments, that you kind of gotta get out and see people and meet people just to kind of see what's going
yeah,
on, just to
yeah.
kind of get an understanding and
Mm,
try to touch people and see what's going on. Because I think great ideas and solutions can come from anybody.
yeah.
And so, we're not, putting our best foot forward, essentially locking folks up in City Hall or
Yeah.
or the courthouse,
uh,
because anybody could get up and go somewhere and see something and have a
mm,
brilliant idea.
mm.
And so I think that, you know, yeah, by the nature of some jobs, you're kind of stuck there. But we do
Yeah.
need to work on, just at even once a quarter, once a month, getting folks out to just see.
Yeah, exactly. Like just to get in touch with what you work for, like
Mhm.
you're doing all this for people.
Right.
So just get in touch with them, see how they experience what you create, and hear and listen from them. Not only like sitting behind the screens and reading papers and so on. Like just go once in no, I don't know, in a month, in a week. Just go out and see how is life being outdoor.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
mm.
If you know, if you are one of the receptionists who set up a meeting between, someone in the community and someone inside, and then like there's this project that now exists because of that, you should go see the project. You should go
Yeah, yeah,
see what you have participated in. The building
exactly.
inspector, the plans person needs to actually go see the physical building that they were,
Mm,
monitoring on paper. Because I think that also just keeps you grounded and interested in your
mm.
job. I think, you can get very, rhythmic and
Yeah.
robotic in what you're doing. It becomes very rote.
Mm,
And getting out and seeing the actual thing that you participated in, I
yeah.
think really does help ground you and reinvigorate your passion for what it is that you're doing.
Yeah. It's also good for the body when you move, good for the health.
Yes, yes.
uh, we talk a bit about like creating equal opportunities for
Mhm.
people in a city. When we say equal opportunities, what do we mean by this?
Yeah. So Like I said, historically in the United States, marginalized populations, indigenous people, Black people, our neighbors from the South, from Central and South America, um, it's been a very difficult and different experience. Um, and I remember, I remember being in high school when 9/11 happened, and um, I went to high school with folks, kids who were from Lebanon,
Yeah.
whose families were from Lebanon, families from India, and other parts of the world, and like their experience and how we, really had a really shameful experience
Mm.
in the aftermath of that time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think for me, like when I'm working in government and I'm thinking about things, I am thinking about these basic building blocks, like equal access to clean, safe, affordable housing.
Mm.
Um, access to a quality education and quality extracurricular activities, like whether it's sports, whether it's extra academic assistance. I think about how I was, fortunate enough to get to do other things like Girls
Mm.
Inc. and then go down to Auburn University and like go to their architecture school. I had no intention of being
Yeah.
an architect, but it was an experience that, like, as a child, I got to go to a college campus and I got
Mm.
to know that college existed. Because as crazy as that sounds, like there are, people who grow up who don't have a concept of like, oh, there's of what college is.
Mm.
Um, and so I think about all these different interventions that were public. I mean, Girls Inc. Is a nonprofit that receives public funding. Having access to libraries where I could go pick up books, or like my local library, the Titusville Library, is the first place I saw a globe, and I could spin the globe and just look at different countries and read or attempt
Yeah.
to read different words
Mm.
and just have an awareness of like, oh, the United States is just this little part of like this big old
Yeah.
thing, which usually is the reverse here in the United States. We think, in the United States, we think the United States is this big old thing, and it's not. But being able to build that awareness at a younger age to know, like, oh, there are other languages, other
Mm.
cultures, um, and just having the ability for my mind to expand is for me what I think about. I think about these foundational building blocks: food, shelter, water, education,
Mm.
and having the opportunity to expand your mind. I truly think that if you can if you can think a little bit outside of yourself, and you take a step in a direction, that all of your resources will meet you.
Yeah.
So there'll be people there to be like, yes, I can write a letter for you. Sure, I can introduce you to someone, or sure, I don't mind donating to help you go on a trip. Like those things exist, but we have to create the physical and social infrastructure for people to be able to meet
Mm. Mm.
that opportunity. And
Mm.
so that's the way I look at it. I'm like, when I was in graduate school, we were introduced to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German philosopher, who
Mm.
had this general idea that the role of government is to use our common resources to support the basic human needs of people so that they are in a place to hear God's word, right? So that they are in a place to actually work towards their divine purpose. But if someone is hungry, they can't hear God. If you need shelter, if
Mm.
you're experiencing other kinds of distress, you're always in survival mode. So you can't think about, why am I here and what talents and skills are already in me that I can actually contribute
Mm.
to society. And so I kind of see it that way too. It's like, if in order like we need to set people up to be in a space where they can actually pursue the things that they are put here to pursue.
Mm, mm,
And so that's the way I view equal opportunity, is making sure that we're not squandering those resources, and we're putting our best foot forward as much as we can to create a society
mm.
where people can pursue um,
Yeah. And to
whatever
create
they believe
this, yeah, to create this, of course, everyone has a part of responsibility. But
in.
who is the main responsible for creating
Mhm.
equal opportunities?
Well, I mean, obviously the government. I mean,
Mm,
historically here in the United States, it has been the government that has acted in a discriminatory manner. Like it
okay.
has been the federal government, our federal government. I
Mm,
mean, still acts in a way that is discriminatory. Our state governments, our local governments, um, whether it be through redlining, um, racist covenants, where we deploy resources. Um,
mm.
my city has almost 120 parks, anywhere between like 115, 120 parks. And not because like we just really love green space, which we do, but because of segregation, we had to have like twice as many,
Ah.
because one was for whites only, one was for
Mm.
not white people, mostly Black people. But we also know that there are more people in the world, but in the
Y-
United States, the
yeah.
concept of race is very binary.
Mm,
Um, and because of that, so part of that legacy of discrimination is an abundance of infrastructure
mm.
that we no longer really need, and we definitely cannot financially support.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so it is the responsibility of those who work in the government, who manage the government apparatus, to act in a repairing
Mm,
of of what was done, as much as we possibly can, um, and to manage the repercussions of those discriminatory acts. So the housing crisis that we're experiencing in the United States is
mm.
directly related
Okay.
to discriminatory practices in
Mm,
housing, and where houses were built, and the quality of those houses, and the ability for people to get financing, um, to go into a home. Birmingham has a lot of great housing stock, and
mm.
I don't say this because I want everybody to come to Birmingham and buy and buy up all our houses, but it is quite affordable. And
Mm,
we do, like, because Birmingham is a blue collar town, right? So we were a steel industry town. We were called the Pittsburgh of the South. My father was a former union steel worker. So
mm.
I'm like, I know people are like, oh, you're one of those leftist babies. I'm like, yeah, my dad was in the union. um, but because of that, we have very skilled craftsmen. So we're talking about wonderful brick homes, wonderful architecture, but a lot of them sit empty because people can't access the financing to
Mm.
just to acquire and renovate a home. It's,
Yeah.
it's easier to get financing for more people in a new subdivision,
Mm, mm.
where after we've like cleared a forest to like throw up all these houses. That's easier to finance than the homes that already exist that just need a little love.
Yeah.
So, like things like that, working with these industries like banking and finance, like insurance industries,
Mm.
you know, Black communities being uh, either uninsured or very underinsured. So you think
Okay.
about when people experience violence. So when you would have your home bombed, right, during the civil rights movement, you did
Mm.
not get an insurance settlement to
Okay.
rebuild your house. That did not happen.
Mm.
You had the community had to come together, or you had to, literally do it yourself with your hands.
Mm.
Um, or that was this community mechanism that helps people rebuild their houses.
Yeah.
And and how they built, like the reason that we have a neighborhood called Dynamite Hill,
Mm.
nicknamed Dynamite Hill for that reason, because it was bombed so frequently. But none of those families received insurance payouts.
Mm.
There was no restitution or recompense to set those families back up financially after having their homes destroyed.
Mm.
So there's a lot of gaps that haven't been filled because of the way the government approached things back then. But we're working now.
Mm.
I think that to give some credit to the Biden administration, not to toot America's horn here, but they have been very forward and honest about the discrimination that
Okay.
the government has
Mm.
inflicted, and putting together programs and opportunities to combat some of
Mm.
it. I don't
Mm.
think there are many things that cannot be reversed. Um, there are things that some things that can't even be repaired. So that's
Mm.
hard.
Yeah.
That there's just some things we can't fix.
No.
And we're just figuring out how to go forward and bring people along as best we can. But I feel like I kind of rambled on that answer, so I don't know if it
No,
makes a lot of sense.
no, it's how to say, because this is what we are exploring now. Is like more urbanism through the lens of being black and an American um,
Hmm.
in the U.S. And it's a lot of things that we don't really experience or know. That now, like you're telling me, that the number of parks, for instance, this is a
Hmm.
crazy thing. No,
Hmm.
and what are like the things that makes you, how to say, you see the city failed.
Hmm.
Let's say maybe not now, maybe in the past. Talking more about the Black American community.
Yeah. Whew. Simple things like one-way streets.
Uh,
Like where one-way streets go. Where I the city that I work for, Birmingham, is has applied for a grant to actually reverse that, to
mm,
make, because we had one-way streets going through our historic Black business district. And
okay.
it's like, well, the shop owners are not going to get any traffic if we have like four
Only.
lanes going
Mm.
one direction. People are literally speeding
Yeah,
through.
exactly. Yeah.
So that doesn't help the
Mm.
commercial viability. Um, but so that's the thing. So we can
Mm.
reverse. Yes, we can change the direction of the street,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we can't make up for decades
Mm.
of you know non-viability. Like the money that you could have made,
Mm.
had this not been the case. So that's one of those things, like, yeah, we can stop it now, but it doesn't really allow us to fully
Mm.
repair the
Yeah.
harm. Um, we're having conversations about parks
Mm.
and finding a way to assess, you know, which of these parks is
Mm.
the most necessary, which of these parks actually works towards park equity. So I think people think just that because parks exist in vast number, that there's park
Yeah.
equity, and that's not necessarily true, because all of the parks are not created equal. They're not the same size. They don't have the same amenities,
Mm.
and so assessing that and understanding the demographics. How far, not just how far is a walk to the park, what is the quality of that
Mm.
walk to the park, and you know, working on that so then we can concentrate resources better to
Mm.
give a better, recreation experience, in hopes that, does increase literacy, improve social cohesion, improve health outcomes, because we have more people coming
Yeah.
to a park that they like. It's like, oh, this park is really nice because now it has something that I actually want. And now we have sports teams, or like people are doing aerobics
Mm.
and things of that nature. So it's this balancing of being proactive and trying to undo and redo,
Mm.
but
Mm.
So understanding, and not just understanding it, but there's an emotional component
Yeah.
of realizing that you cannot fix some things. That
No.
there are just some things that are broken, and or that it's going to take generations to really see the full impact of
Mm,
decisions.
mm.
And that can be very difficult because, like, you want to see it now. Like, if you want to see
Exactly.
things alleviated
Ah,
immediately, but
ah.
it's just not possible.
Mm, mm.
So it is definitely a balancing act of doing the things that you can do, and like the grace around like understanding that there are just things like you know we
Mm.
can't really reverse, or definitely not affect deeply immediately.
Exactly. Like we can't, how to say, we can't see the changes now at the moment. It's like it's gonna take years,
Hmm.
hopefully not so many, until we see something of what
Yeah.
we are changing now.
Hmm.
And it's, I understand, it's like it's very hard that when you want to change something because you had enough of what you see, but at the same time it takes time, especially when it comes to like cities and this systematic and structural things. It's
Hmm.
like long time, and it's very annoying.
Yeah. It is very annoying. I mean, the interstate system, the Biden administration does have a program called Reconnecting Communities, where they're wanting to, do away with like interstates that, which
Mm.
apparently is like a worldwide thing. I thought it was just an American thing
Okay.
from the United
Mm.
States. I don't mean to say American to exclude Canadians and Central and South Americans, but I thought it was only a thing from the United States where
Mm.
interstates would go up in Latino neighborhoods, Black neighborhoods,
Yeah.
and essentially like destroy communities. Like it would separate. You put this physical barrier, and
Mm.
similarly with train tracks. When I was in Nairobi
Mm.
earlier this year, I literally saw the same thing. There was like, yes,
Okay.
on this side of the interstate
Yeah.
are informal settlements. On this side of the interstate is a neighborhood. And it's
Mm.
like, this concept of,
Mm. Mm.
using infrastructure to divide people, or deeming land less valuable solely because of the people who inhabit it.
Yeah.
And saying, oh, we can just drive this through your neighborhood. And while I think it is great that we want to address it, I'm like, well, it's already done. It's been up for 50, 60 years.
Right.
Like, I don't know that we can, you
Mm.
know, every case is different, but I'm like, is this something that can be repaired?
Mm.
And is it as simple as the physical barrier? And I don't think so. There's a psychological barrier that now
Exactly.
exists
Yeah.
that we have to address. And so yeah, it's time consuming. And
Mm.
even though you and I, we're practitioners, much like your listeners, a lot of the people we deal with are elected, and so
Yeah.
there's always this political reality of
Mm.
timing,
Yeah.
right? So you can seem effective as an elected person,
Mm.
and so there's this there can be, this clash of ideals where we're like, this is what this takes. And
Mm.
they're
Mm.
like, I only have 4 years. And
Exactly.
you're like, well, and so now you're trying to stick something in a
Yeah.
4 year
Yeah.
pocket that should
Yeah.
take 20 years.
Yeah. And also,
Yeah.
like, sometimes, how to say, it's a lot of architecture and city planning washing, I call it, that just removing the highway might solve the segregation, or
Hmm.
like doing this might, like, physical, removing this physical barrier will solve the segregation. I think it needs a lot of other work as well, not only, like, it's not enough to do this with only like removing a highway or building like a walking path between two communities. We need like really much more.
Hmm. There's much more. There's a social,
Yeah.
I mean, I think about talking to people who were displaced from their homes so that the interstate could be built. And you talk to them and they're like, yes, my childhood, where I grew up, like where I was destroyed,
Mm.
that is not necessarily repairable. I cannot recreate that.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know what is sufficient to cover that,
Yeah.
because because more than likely, if you were even compensated at all, because again, these were mostly minority communities, if
Mm.
you were even compensated at all, you weren't compensated fairly. And so
Mm.
then, like, there's like this setback in your family where you had a home, you were stable, everything was
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And then now you don't. And now you got to go find a new home. And you may not be financially able to do that. And then, so like,
Mhm.
there's this ripple effect in your family
Yeah.
that's gone on for multiple generations. Like, we can't necessarily fix like the wealth or stability that your family would have earned had that not happened.
Mm.
I don't have a calculator to be like, to calculate that up and say, well, here's what.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a lot of the work is social. It is
Mm.
psychological,
Yeah.
and just helping people work through that trauma, and you know and how they see us and how they see government, how they see these entities, their desire to work with
Mm.
or not. It's based on those experiences. Like, do they even believe? I mean, people
Mm.
who go and they say, I don't
Yeah.
want this, I don't want this in my neighborhood, I don't want this in my neighborhood.
Mm.
And it still shows up in their neighborhood. And then like you're like, well, we don't have good community engagement. They don't want to
Mm.
come talk to us. I'm like, well, they told you they didn't want. They didn't want something and you did it anyway. And I like,
Yeah.
so what do you think? Like, how do you
Exactly.
think this is
Uh-huh.
supposed to work? They're just supposed to keep showing up and
Uh,
when they don't feel heard or listened to. Like
mm.
that's not how that
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
it's a lot of
e-
work.
exactly, exactly, and a lot of work, and not only physical, but also social, economical, and so on. And what
Mhm,
I know about you is that you're not only working in the council, but
mhm.
you're also running elevators.
Yes.
And I love to hear more about this. Like, what was the background that you started elevators?
Okay, so Elevators is named after my favorite Outkast song, the rap duo from Atlanta,
Yeah,
their song Elevators. And it's really about uplift, like community uplift, which is a theme that we've already kind of discussed, where I'm
yeah,
just really interested in helping people kind of meet those ground level needs so
mm,
that then they can just like flourish and go
yeah,
on, like, go on up from there.
mm,
And so what, Elevators at the moment, like right now, we're community engagement. So one of my principles is I don't want engagement to be extractive, which it can and has traditionally been. Whether it's from research institutions, banking institutions, brands or whatever, you show up in a community, you get all this information.
yeah,
You either use it to write grants and you never come back to the
mm,
community. So you're essentially profiting off of
yeah,
this interaction, but like the community gets nothing from it,
mm, no,
other than maybe like a t-shirt, some water bottles, but there's not a
no,
meaningful exchange. And
no,
so my company Elevators, what we do is that we create these meaningful, mutually beneficial exchanges between communities and companies and organizations. And so I tell my pitch to companies and different organizations that community engagement is a business intelligence tool.
mm,
That it's not just, you're coming out here, doing your service hours, but,
yeah,
if you actually talk to these people and get to know them, you may learn something that would be beneficial to how you run your business or what products you want to push out
mm,
or even what you advocate for,
yeah,
in your foundation arm. Um, but you'll never know that if you continue to just show up and pass out water bottles.
mm,
And
mm,
I say this as a person who has a cabinet full of water bottles. Um, and so that's what we do. We create, whether it's traditional meetings, conferences,
mm,
like we've done pop-ups, very creative things. We also work with local creative economies.
Mm.
So any activity that we are paid to do, anything I need to outsource, whether it's a DJ, a caterer, a photographer, they're coming from that community. So I'm hiring from in the community, um, local creatives. So spending money with our firm
Yeah.
actually is more circular. It doesn't just, hang out with me and my friends. It actually goes deeper in your community. And it allows people to try out entrepreneurship. So I like to work with creatives or people who are just starting out or folks who aren't sure, like, well, I don't know if I want to do this. Well, come take pictures for me
Ah,
and see, is this something that you want to do?
okay.
And then if you like it, then we can talk further about what kind of resources are available in your community
Hmm.
and where you can go take your next steps to more fully pursue entrepreneurship at whatever level you want. So it's
Yeah.
this twofold thing where I'm working with, these companies to have them have better interactions, but also help, giving a lot of entrepreneurs their first opportunity to try their hand at entrepreneurship in these creative
Mm.
industries.
Yeah. Do companies understand the value of like including and integrating community in their like business model or process and so on? Or it's like still it's difficult to convince them?
You know, I I wanted to say I thought we were seeing some changes
Hmm.
in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. I thought
Hmm.
we were having more candid conversations and things of that nature. We've we've regressed
Okay.
since then,
Hmm.
in my opinion. Um, you know, we didn't go as deep as we should have um, in exploring how um, companies really interact as a part of community,
Yeah.
not separate, not like you have
Mm.
government, community, business, but like, no, we're all in the
Mm.
same,
Mm.
we're all here together.
Mm.
Um, I think, a lot of funding went out,
Yeah.
but not a lot of connections, not a
Mm.
lot of experiences, not a lot of people on the ground seeing things, making different social connections across different demographics, or even really changing the engagement model. It was just
Mm.
like, oh, we're gonna give more funding, but it's like the apparatus itself didn't change.
Exactly.
So I'm like, so the outcomes aren't gonna necessarily change either.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, so I think that for some companies, depending on how they're run, like we have some companies here locally that are still family owned,
Mm.
family run. They're like, they're not necessarily um, focused on shareholder profits.
Yeah.
Those are the companies. I mean, all companies are run by people, but I'm like, these are people run companies. Like, these are the companies that are, we get better interaction with those companies because they're run by people who grew up here,
Yeah.
who have a significant tie to the place. I remember I spent a couple days in the city of Chattanooga,
Mm.
hanging out with them when Andy Burke was mayor, and one of um, his cabinet members was talking to me about Chattanooga and their pollution problem they had because of steel industry or whatever the industry was up there.
Yeah.
And they were saying, well, the reason that it got cleaned up was because the family that owned the mill
Hmm.
was from Chattanooga. And they
Ah.
were breathing the bad air too.
Okay.
So they were invested in the community because they were from the community. And oftentimes, when you have companies that transplant into your community, or they've gotten so big, even if they've started off as a local company, they've gotten so big that
Yeah.
they're so far removed from those very common
Mm.
interactions. Like bumping into somebody at the grocery store, or like you're going out to eat and there's like the person who runs such and such company. Like, but
Mm.
when you're so far removed from that, you 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 can seem less concerned
Yeah,
with
yeah.
what the everyday person is experiencing. And if you're
Mm.
not deliberate about experiencing wherever you are on the ground, then no,
Mm.
you will continue to miss the mark and continue to invest in a system and an apparatus that does not work.
Yeah. So what you see and observe is like, okay, a lot of fundings within this, but like not really so much of building connection.
Right.
Mm.
And also I think there's a lot of misalignment. So you have
Mm.
resources going to people who may be well intentioned, but they're not as talented as
Mm.
someone else. But this person over here who is really good at what they do doesn't have the social
Yeah.
capital to be in connection,
Mm.
with the funder.
Yeah.
And so you have a grave misalignment of resources and talent.
Mm.
And so you don't see the effectiveness of what you're looking for either, which could then also cause you to not want to do as much as opposed to really investigating, well, why isn't this working?
Mm. Mm. But is Elevators a non-profit organization or like a company?
It's a company. We
Okay.
are a
Yeah.
for profit.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you have two jobs, right? One in the council and one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's yep. It's that. It's both of those things. It's of course, other placemaking duties.
Yeah.
I'll be in Mexico City next week.
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
yeah, so it's all of those things. It's even, talking to, newcomers to the profession, new planners, new MPAs, new architects who are, trying to figure out
Mm.
how they do their career and make a difference.
Yeah.
I think that um, people, when you have an opportunity to grow up somewhere, and I tell people, I was like, I learned how to love because I grew up in a community that loved me, like
Mm.
that poured into me, that made sure that we had access to things so that I could go off and learn things. And I think now it is like making space for people,
Yeah.
for young people who have gone off to college or gone to do these things, who want to come back and work in their neighborhoods, making space
Mm.
for these people to actually return
Yeah.
the gifts that were given to them by their community,
Mm.
and allowing them to work in space and in place, and to implement all the things that they have learned and experienced, um, not as as a gift,
Yeah.
as a gift for what they have been given, and not like seen as this like overbearing, oh, I know it all kind of thing. And it's like, no, I'm returning the gift
Yeah.
that was given to me by this community.
Mm.
So that is, an encapsulation of how I see my work, not only at the council, but also with elevators.
Yeah.
I am working to return this gift that I was given by my community.
That's beautiful. And what challenges you face, like as a Carmen doing this?
I have I would say like going to Kenya was like life changing for me. It was my first time in Africa.
Okay.
And I remember having a conversation with some young women there who are in similar profession.
Yeah.
And one young lady, she says, "You're so lucky that you get to be from the United States." And I was
Okay.
like,
Mm.
"Am I?" Because I had never
Mm.
thought about it that way. I have never thought, "Oh, I'm so lucky to be here." I have never thought um, ever,
Okay.
and not in a sense of, because I know people will hear this and think, "Oh, you're just so ungrateful because you could be," but that's not that's not what I mean. I, as a person who understands the history of Black people in this country and what we continue to experience, I'm
Yeah.
like, it don't feel like look.
Mm.
And
That's true.
so, but from her experience
Mm.
growing up in Kenya and looking across the
Yeah.
pond and saying, oh, Black people in America get to do X,
Mm.
Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And my response to her, I said, well, it costs a lot. I was
Yeah.
like, if you look at the arc of history of Black people in the United States, I mean, it's cost us and continues to cost us a lot. And I don't think it's ungrateful or weird to want to go to the grocery store and not get shot. Like
Yeah.
that is not, you know, so I think that, part of the difficulty, not difficulty, but it's just as W.B. Du Bois calls it, double consciousness. It's like I realize what it means to be from the United States.
Yeah.
But I only realize that when I'm not in the United States.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's why it's important to travel so you can see the
it's like,
perspective.
yeah, because in the United States, I'm Black. I'm a Black woman, which
Yeah.
is a specific thing and a specific experience,
Mm.
which is not the same as people who are opposite of me. But when I'm abroad, to be
Yeah.
quote unquote treated like an American,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's something I notice. That's how I know it's different. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is different. This is not, and to experience it and try to process it, is difficult because I remember being in Amsterdam and I met this Ghanaian fellow. And I was like, so what is it like? I was like, we're Black. And he was like, you're American. And I was like, what? I was like, no, like, we're
Yeah.
having I'm like, I want to talk to you because I want to
Yeah.
understand your
Yeah.
experience. And, blah, blah. And he was like, it won't be the same for you because you're from the United States.
Okay.
And I was like, ouch. That kind of, it was kind of a gut punch because that's not how I see myself as a part of the diaspora. Like,
Yeah.
yes, my nationality, I'm from the United States. When it comes down to next summer for the Olympics, I'm rooting for Team USA. Yes, because I'm from the United States. I am, we're going up against the Jamaicans, in track and field. This is the way it is.
Yeah.
But I also see myself as a person, a part of global Blackness, as a person of the diaspora, a descendant of African people. And even to a certain extent, I see myself as African. So to kind of be told by, an African from the continent, well, no, not you. I was like,
Do you feel sad when you hear this?
it was, I don't know if sad. I think I felt a little rejected.
Okay.
And he wasn't being mean. It wasn't,
Not just
he
like
was just trying
neutral.
to get me to understand the social experience, like the social order of where I was. He wasn't being mean. So these are just my own feelings.
Yes.
But it was like a power I didn't want. Like I didn't want to be special. I wanted to just like be in community and just like, oh, okay, so do you do this? Because we do this. Do you do that? Like to just like have these this
Building
exchange
a connection. Yeah.
to connect and figure out like what things that we do similar still. Like, it's like, oh, well, we eat this. Do you still eat that? Or it's just like, have these different connections.
Yeah.
And to kind of to have this like, well, yes, these things are true, but in this context, in this, European context, particularly in this Western European context, you are from the United States. And that's what people will read first. And so therefore we will not have the same experience. And it was also kind of like this heaviness or responsibility, because it's like, so what am I supposed to do about that? Like, because I don't like
No, it's not, how to say, it's not your mistake or fault.
right. And it's like, but in my own country, I don't
Mm,
have a level of power
yeah.
that other people have to change anything inside it. But
Mm,
you're saying here in this context, I now have this social capital, this potential power that I don't even know how to exercise and I don't even recognize
yeah.
because all of my life I have not had it.
Mm,
And so it is like it is really just like this mind
yeah.
trip of, and then like also like, so if I want to be on vacation, like I believe like there was something happening
Okay.
and like no, it was like coming up on like Emancipation Day for Amsterdam. I wasn't gonna be there, but there were other activities. And they're like, and I was like, so am I supposed to participate in like
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
Emancipation Day because I'm Black? Or am I allowed to be on vacation? Or like, am I expected to, participate in
Mm,
global Blackness and be like, yeah, we're here protesting? Or like it was just like, what am I supposed to be doing?
yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
felt like I just felt really, really confused and a little bit disoriented around like, and somewhat guilty,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Because I'm like, oh, I just came here to have a good time. I didn't really, I didn't want to. I just came to have a few cocktails. I didn't want to like get into like this deep
yeah.
conversation around, and so like it's still something I think about.
Mm, mm,
Um, I still think about it. I still think about like the conversations I had in Nairobi, the
yeah.
experiences I had in Europe, and like, understanding the concept around like global Blackness outside of this abstract. Cause like, the
Mm,
abstract is, yeah, we are Black and
yeah.
blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. But then like
Yeah. When
in
you
my
zoom
life,
in.
I was like, oh, and but we think about it and particularly in the United States, like we do yearn to be connected, knowing that,
Mm,
Black college students
yeah.
were some of the most vocal people against apartheid in South Africa. Like
Yeah.
we have always seen ourselves in connection. Like we have a whole neighborhood here in
Mm,
Birmingham where the streets are named after freedom fighters from South African apartheid.
wow.
It's like there's
Wow.
always been like this connection and this
Yeah. Yeah.
concern
Yeah.
about what is happening to Black people, whether it be in Haiti, whether it be
Mm,
what's going on in the Dominican Republic,
mm,
to Haitians or to people who
yeah.
appear to be too dark. And just all these different contexts, we've always been concerned and felt like this connection and kinship. And so I think I was probably too high. I was like really happy. I was like, yes, you know,
uh,
here we are.
yeah.
And they
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
like, hold on.
Like exactly. We are not
Yeah.
exactly the same. Uh, and other challenges you face when you work as an urbanist.
I think also like in the domestic sense, there's
Yeah.
like this concept of urbanism, right? Like this
Mm.
concept that the city is not haphazard, right? Because I think that because I asked people, I was like, you ever like walk around and like wonder why is the house right here or as opposed to over there, or why is this building here?
Yeah.
And often people are like, no, like so there's this and I'm not sure how we quite got there. I guess,
Mm.
if you're born, if you didn't create something,
Yeah.
you assume it just exists.
Yeah.
It
It
just
is there.
existed. You're not investigating how it came to exist or
No.
why does it exist or who put it there. It was there when you got here, and so you just kind of move on.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that I struggle, not a struggle, but a challenge that I put towards people, I'm like, be inquisitive about your environment.
Yeah.
Like, don't just take for granted just because something is there, that it's gonna always be there, that it has to be there, that it should be there.
Mm.
Just like really working to get people to like be curious.
Yeah.
And in a lot of communities, like curiosity can be deadly, right? Like you don't get to ask questions. You don't get
Yeah.
to you were discouraged from those things. You weren't allowed access to plans and information. And so as a means of survival, you just had to take whatever was given to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And now I'm saying, no, you don't have to do that. Like, I want you to ask why the sidewalk is on this side of the street and not on this side of the street. I want you to call and ask, people. I want you to have access to architects so they can explain to you why buildings look the way they do, or why does it have to go this way. Like, I want you to be able to access folks who work in infrastructure so they can explain to you what's going on. Like, why is the road poor? Like, what are you putting in the ground? Why don't you have high-speed internet? I want people to be more inquisitive and have a better understanding. Because I don't I think people often think that we want people to do stuff. I want you to understand, because then in your own mind, in your own genius, once you understand something, then then your brain will work. You will start to extrapolate. You will start to think about things as a resident. And then you don't really need me anymore. Like, once you understand, okay, I understand how this works. I understand why sidewalks are important. Then you're going to go advocate for sidewalks. You're like, well, now that I understand why it's important for me to have a sidewalk in my neighborhood, I want a sidewalk and I want it right now. So for me, it's that empowerment. It's like, I want people to come to City Hall. I tell folks all the time, please come to public meetings. Please come to the council meeting, because I want you to understand, because I want you there to ask questions, and I want you to feel involved. Because to me, it's only good. I mean, yes, there are going to be people who are just ridiculous, but I think it's always a net positive to have people informed and interested.
Yes.
And not only showing up when something negatively impacts them. It's like, I want you here all the time. I want you here, talking about, housing, or like, how can we be proactive if we have people who are aging? How are we working with them, and their families, to make sure that they keep the house in their family, and they have the resources that they need to move through a legal process and create an estate plan, so they'll know what's happening. And this is not something that we're working on while also trying to bury somebody. I want children more involved. I know you specialize with kids, but I mean, I think kids just feel, in an adult world, things just happen. You have no control, no say. And, I think that breeds a certain kind of distance and helplessness. I think it also, I think we inadvertently teach children not to advocate for themselves and not to have agency, because we don't include them in public processes. And so then we wonder why, children may experience something and then they don't report it. And it's like, well, you did kick them out the meeting. But so I that is a challenge, is getting people to kind of turn a corner. And I'm saying, I want you here. I'm not saying don't come to City Hall. I want you here. I want you to ask questions. I want you to be curious. And I want you to do tactical urbanism. Like, you cannot make permanent changes to city infrastructure. But if you want to host a block party, yes. Yes. If you want to, put wildflowers in the medians, or on the public right of way, because the grass to get as cut as often as it should, because our public works department is spread so thin. So we've had people who are just like, oh, we'll just take care of it. We'll just plant something else that doesn't need to be mowed and maintained, but it's still beautiful. And there's, we'll just do it. And so probably much to the chagrin of other people I work with, I am always encouraging
That's good.
people
Yeah.
to take it, to be curious and to act in their own best
Yeah.
interests in their own cities.
That's good. And Carmen, like you are so passionate about what you work with,
Mhm.
and I want to ask you, how do you keep the work-life balance? How do you interpret the work-life balance rule in your life?
Well, someone's asked me this before, and I was like, I love cities, so
Yeah.
it doesn't like work. So even if I'm like on vacation, like
Mm.
I actually did go on vacation this year, where I wasn't working,
Yeah.
but I was still observing everything in the city. I was like, "Oh my gosh, why are there so many lights?" Like, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
I'm looking, "Oh, that's an interesting park." Or, like, "Oh, they have a light rail system." So
Yeah.
even if I'm getting ready to go to the Beyonce concert, which is what I was doing, like,
Yeah.
I'm walking in downtown Charlotte, and I'm, like, observing the pedestrian spaces and and all these things. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't actually stop. My brain is always in urbanism mode,
Active. Yeah.
which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful time at the Beyonce concert. I
Mm.
walked to the Beyonce concert, and got to observe all these different things. But I do take vacations. I am also very family oriented. I spend a lot of time with my parents and nieces and
Nice.
nephews, siblings.
Yeah.
So we're also RVers, so we go out in nature and hang out and go to the beach.
Mm.
Um, so there's a lot. There's downtime, and also like I'm a big fan of like mystery shows, particularly like international mystery. So like
Okay.
BBC and CBC shows. They're like I
Yeah.
just started Murdoch Mysteries. I just found out about it. I'm a big Doctor Who fan. Um, I'm a big fan of Call the Midwife. I love the BBC. I love like
Yeah.
foreign shows. Are
Yeah.
very interesting to me. And so I do watch a lot of TV,
Yeah.
probably more than I should. But also there's exercise. Um,
So
you know, I work
yeah.
it out.
Yeah. So there is no like a clear separation from 8 to 5. I'm an urbanista, and from 5 to 12, I'm Carmen.
No, Carmen is an urbanist.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
always an urbanist. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not always on duty as chief of staff to my chief
Yeah. Yeah.
counselor. No.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm not always on duty as
Mm.
running my company, the CEO of my company. But I'm always an urbanist. I'm
Yeah.
always, and this is, I've always just been curious
Mm.
about how we organize ourselves in society, and the accompanying infrastructure. So it doesn't matter where I am
Yeah.
or what's going on, I'm always going to be looking and noticing,
Mm.
oh, this neighborhood doesn't have any gutters. or, or no, this is interesting. I'm always going to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I don't
Mm.
feel like it's overkill. It doesn't feel
Mm.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm never saying, "Oh, I wish I could stop."
I
It's
understand
just,
that. Yeah.
it's just the way it is. It's like,
Yeah.
just like how I
You're.
see.
I mean, so far you're happy and you're not causing a harm to somebody else. So why not? Like you can be urbanist 24/7, and that's it.
Well, yeah, but I think like other people who are passionate, asking like I have friends who are doctors,
Yeah.
and it's like it doesn't matter that they're not at work if they're still noticing,
Yeah.
um, you know that if they hear someone coughing or choking, like they're still going to be able to notice. And so I
Mm.
think it's kind of like that when you have a calling, when you're passionate about something,
Yeah.
it's just a part of who you are.
Mm.
So you're always going to be attuned to it, but you're not always at work. Like I don't
No,
have to
it's
do it. Like I can see that there should be a stop sign
yeah.
right there,
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna call anybody and be like, y'all need to get a stop. Like I'm just gonna notice
Yeah,
it and
you
I'm gonna
just
move
like
on. Yeah, just move it on. but
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
gonna do anything about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's super inspiring and fun to talk to you. You're funny in a way. It's good conversation. And now we are like, how to say, we explored your work with the council, with elevators, and
Mhm.
also like the how you observe the world as a Black American. Of course, we didn't
Mhm.
touch on many different topics as well, but I hope this is like the first conversation we are having in the podcast, and more to be
Yeah.
continued. We are in the last section of this episode, and it's more about messages. So the
Uh-huh.
first question is that, what is your message to Carmen, to yourself?
Ooh. Um. Ooh. Okay, wait a minute. You said this beforehand. I don't know why I'm stumbling through this, but I think I just to keep going.
Mm,
Um. Every time I think every time that I've tried something new or
yeah,
I've tried to fly, so to speak, it's always worked out. So, or even when it felt like it wasn't working out in the most immediate terms,
yeah,
like I can look back over my experiences and say, oh, that actually did work out. So I
yeah,
would, always encourage myself to continue to
mm,
try, continue to take risks, continue to be continue to be loud and continue to be
yeah,
visible and take up space and, just continue and just,
yes,
because it can be, it can be shaky sometimes. I can experience doubt around, is this really working? Like, are people really hearing me? Are they really
mm,
understanding what I'm
yeah,
saying? Are people really actually interested, in what I'm talking about? Like, do they understand how important and impactful this is? Um, and anytime I've experienced that,
mm,
I've had a gentle reminder of no, yes,
yeah,
this is good. You should keep going. So
yes.
my message
So
to myself is
yeah,
definitely keep going.
keep going, Carmen. Yeah. And three takeaway messages to our listeners.
Oh, okay. So I would say, if you're working with community, um, like it's my three things: be honest, have integrity, couple that humility with your expertise.
Mm,
Excuse me, and you know, really have a good time. Like if you're really passionate about this, I don't experience burnout because I'm passionate.
yeah.
And also, manage myself pretty well to make sure that I'm not overworking myself.
Yeah.
But um just keep that passion for whatever it is that you love because it's there on purpose.
Yeah.
It is not just this, it's not an accident that you feel the way you do. Like you have a purpose if you have a passion. And
Mm,
so keep nurturing that passion so you can do what you're supposed to do.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And last question in this episode is going to be asked by you. So I don't have
Okay.
questions. Now it's your turn to ask our listeners a question.
Ooh, okay. Hmm. So I guess a good question would be,
Yeah.
um, when you dream of cities, what does that look like? Like, what is what does it taste like? What does it sound like?
Mm,
You know, your ideal city. When you dream of cities,
yeah.
how do your senses engage it? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it taste like? Who's there? I would love to understand how we see our highest selves as it relates to cities.
Mm. Good question. Great. Well, Carmen, thank you so much again for giving your time. And I was really happy to see you in the Pontevedra. Now we are having this conversation. I'm really looking forward to see you IRL and to continue our conversation, maybe digitally or IRL when we meet again.
Yes, yes. I'm sure I'll be back on that side of the world
Yes.
sometime next year.
Yeah, hopefully, hopefully. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. You do the same.